And I'm going to have Jennifer come up and introduce the speaker.
Hello, everyone. We are really excited to welcome Lindsay Martinez to speak to us tonight. She is a research program coordinator with the East Foundation, and one of her main roles is with Ocelot conservation planning. And so I'm going to just hand it over to her because I'm excited to learn about ocelots, and I'm sure a lot of you are too. So Lindsay, come on up.
Okay, is it just this one? I think so. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for introducing me. I want to say thanks so much to the whole chapter here for having me tonight. I think I met some of you perhaps back in October when you all came to our East Foundation Sauz Ranch to enjoy the eclipse and learn about some of our work. And so really glad to see some folks again. And for anyone who I haven't seen before, looking forward to chatting with you tonight. And just want to say, I really admire and respect the work you all do, as volunteers with Texas Master Naturalists. Such a pleasure to meet folks in October. And we do have folks from other parts of the Valley who help us at some of our East Foundation education programming, and those folks do great work, and really appreciate you all as nature lovers and volunteers. I'm very happy to be here to talk to you all more about the ocelot research work that we do down here in South Texas, as well as all the great conservation planning that we are putting forward for private lands that the East Foundation owns and elsewhere. And I know ocelots have been in the news a little bit this last spring, so happy that I can provide a little bit more information, maybe about some of the things that you all have been hearing, and just, really happy to talk about any questions or things folks might have as I'm up here and telling you about ocelots. And the last thing I'll say is just that I'm originally from Montana. I came down here to Texas about 3.5 years ago now with and the reason that I came here was to work on ocelots. And down here in South Texas is the only place in all of the United States that you can work on this species. So such a special animal that you all have down here in your home, and I'm so glad to get to work on it. Just to begin, I am here representing the East Foundation and just wanted to give folks a little bit of a sense of who we are. So the East Foundation, we are the owner and operator of 6 pretty large ranches down here in South Texas, going kind of to the north of the valley. These ranches were owned by the East Foundation, or excuse me, the East family that acquired them beginning around the year 1900. And in 2007, one of the East family members, when he passed away, he decided to put his portion of the lands into a foundation so those lands could be protected in perpetuity and used for kind of a bigger mission. And so that mission that we have at the East Foundation is to use our lands to promote the advancement of land stewardship through 3 program areas. So we do ranching, we do science, and we do education. So first and foremost, ranching, the lands that we manage today have been being ranched for cattle for generations, right? And it's part of the history, and that's an important part of many ranches right down here in South Texas, historically and culturally. So all of our properties down here in South Texas are working ranches. We're operating cow-calf operations. We are, breeding, raising cattle. We're providing beef product to society, and we're operating as a working ranch, just like many of the other landowners down here in South Texas. And then our science part of our foundation ties into our ranching business through research on our ranching. So we do research on livestock productivity, things like what's the best genetic makeup of cattle to live in this harsh South Texas environment. What are the best grazing and ranching strategies to produce good cattle and use the land sustainably, and things like that. And then our science research program, of course, extends beyond the cattle and goes into all of our native habitats and ecosystems and wildlife that we have in South Texas. So we do a lot of work just monitoring and doing research on our native rangeland vegetation, seeing how that changes with climatic conditions and livestock and wildlife use. And then, along with that research on the rangelands, we look at all of our different types of wildlife. So that includes everything, from our pollinators to the many varieties of birds we have here in South Texas. We monitor migrating birds as well as our resident birds like bobwhite quail that you can see over there. There's one that we've banded. We do research on a variety of mammalian wildlife species, such as white-tailed deer, where we've got the opportunity to do really long-term and large-scale research projects on the ecology of these species, their population dynamics, all of that. And then our research also goes into our more sensitive or even threatened and endangered species. Right here, you're looking at a white-tailed hawk, which is a threatened species here in Texas, and a species that's really poorly studied. So we've got a little transmitter on there to study how that hawk is going to disperse from the nests and move around the landscape. So our science program is really seeking to document, ecological and management information about our habitats and wildlife so that we can be good stewards of them here in South Texas. And then just the final arm of the East Foundation is our education program. So this looks familiar to folks who visited us back in October. It's our Sauz Education Center that we have on one of our properties. And we've got big education centers at Sauz as well as our San Antonio Viejo Ranch. And we use those to bring in natural resource professionals, college and graduate students, folks like the Texas Master Naturalists, as well as really thousands of school children from the Rio Grande Valley. We bring them out onto the ranch to what we say is get behind the gates of a working ranch, where they can see where cattle are produced, where their beef comes from, how we are protecting, trees that provide the oxygen for them to breathe, and protecting soil and providing habitat for wildlife and plants as well. So education is the final part of our program there. And if we just take a look back here at the layout of our East Foundation lands, you already heard me talk about the Sauz Ranch here in Willacy County, and then our San Antonio Viejo Ranch, about 2 hours to the west of the coast, and that one's going to maybe an hour or so to the north of Rio Grande City. Sauz specifically is going to be the closest to where we're at here, about an hour and a half or so from us. It's real close to Port Mansfield, if you all have ever been there. And you can see right away from this picture, it's existing, within this green kind of native habitat type of area. But right up against Sauz, we start to see the expanding agricultural and urban and energy development coming out of down here in the Rio Grande Valley. So that starts to butt up right against this ranch that we are protecting at the East Foundation. And of course, the Sauz Ranch is really very special because it is part of one of the 2 known ocelot populations down here in South Texas. So we're looking here where that first dot is, what we call the ranch ocelot population, is found on our Sauz Ranch, as well as other nearby private ranches that are also still protecting habitat for ocelots and other wildlife. We don't know exactly, but we think there might be up to 80 ocelots living at our Sauz Ranch and other proximate private lands there. And then down here, these kind of salmon areas are our protected lands. This is the Laguna Arascosa National Wildlife Refuge there. And that refuge is home to, at last I heard, 21 ocelots right now. We call that the refuge ocelot population living in and on Laguna Arascosa. So all in all, we think, here in Texas, there may be only 100 ocelots remaining over these ranch and refuge populations that are sort of known to science. And it's important to remember, I think, for folks that, Texas is not the only place where ocelots occur across the globe. Over here in the gold is the worldwide geographic range of ocelots. So the U.S. is just a sliver of that, and we've got ocelots all through Central America, much of South America. And all in all, the International Union for Conservation of Nature says that ocelots are as a species of least concern for extinction because they've got some strongholds and probably pretty high numbers in sort of the Amazon basin of South America. But when you look up there, of course, in the United States, we're showing a little bit of range into Arizona. A couple lone ocelots are sometimes known to disperse there. And then the only breeding ocelot populations that we know of that are left in the US are just in that tiny little fraction of South Texas that I showed you. So just going back a little bit to the Sauz Ranch, I want to dive in now to what ocelot work we've actually got going there. And Sauz, again, is near Port Mansfield, just there in the very top of Willacy County. The ranch looks like this. Sorry, it's a bit of a blurry photo, but it's a 27,000 acre property, about 100 square kilometers. And if you look here, you can see, we're right along the Laguna Madre. We've got the coast and these kind of wetland type of areas. We've got thousands of acres of native grassland, prairie type of habitat there. Great for grazing cattle and wildlife there. We've got sand dunes on this ranch that have been blowing in off the coast. And then in these corners going in our southwest up to the northwest corner where it's very dark green, that is where we get into that real thick brush, forest, thorn scrub type of habitat where we do indeed find breeding population of ocelots here on the ranch. Just to show you a bit of what Sauz looks like, in the left panel there, I'm standing up on one of the sand dunes and taking a picture looking out across all the ocelot habitat on our ranch and other lands. And so we call that, thorn scrub or thorn forest. It's going to have mesquite trees, live oak trees up in the canopy, and then real thick understory vegetation with our grasses, brush, our thorny species, cactus, all of that. And all in all, this thorn scrub, provides great cover for wildlife to stay out of this heat and sun that we've got going on right now. All this green stuff is amazing forage, right, for our herbivore species. And then with the cover and the herbivores being attracted in, we then get our predator species, including the elusive ocelot that loves to be there in that thick brush. And so at our Sauz Ranch, we're protecting thousands of acres of brushlands still. We've got ocelots present on the ranch and breeding. And we really like to remind people that our Sauz Ranch is indeed still a working cattle ranch too. And we are making ranching and ocelot conservation compatible efforts there. And, what we really think about is because, for the last hundreds of years, cattle ranching has been a successful enterprise on this land. The East family and the foundation have always been able to hold on to that land, never pressured to sell it to someone who could develop it or convert it into farmland. And because we're successful with the cattle ranching, we can continue protecting all of that thorn forest habitat that's home to the amazing ocelots, as well as all sorts of other wildlife as well. Plenty of birds down to turkeys, javelinas, and our smallest small mammals and herps. So along with protecting the ocelots that are there, we also do a lot of research on ocelot conservation within our science team here at East Foundation. And a lot of our work is done in collaboration with Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. I'll shout you guys out that I see you, who've been helping since at least 2009 on the property, as well as Caesar Clayburgh Wildlife Research Institute at Texas A&M Kingsville. Big research partners for the East Foundation. And so going to tell you all about a couple of the research methods that we've got going out on the Sauz Ranch where we have ocelots. And the first one is going to be camera trapping. So because ocelots are a very elusive species, they're hard to see because they're scared of us. They're mostly awake at night. They're out in the brush. It's very hard for us to do observational studies on ocelots. And so we've got to use the cameras hidden out there in the brush on wildlife trails to try to get photos of ocelots as they walk by our survey sites. A couple pictures of ocelots here coming out on the cameras. And this is a great way to show that every ocelot has a unique spot pattern on its fur. So its pattern of these spots, rosettes, stripes are unique to every single individual. If you're looking right here, we're actually looking at the same ocelot pictures, I think that were taken 3 years apart out on our Sauz Ranch. So this ocelot has chains of spots going back towards its left hip and some distinctive vertical and horizontal lines on the shoulder and the neck. And so ocelots having these unique spots is really helpful to us when we're doing our research because, yeah, exactly. Oh, me? I've been using these pictures to teach kids about ocelots for the last few months, so it's been great. But a great tool for us to see, how long is an ocelot living? How far is it moving? How many do we even have? Nice to be counting animals that all look separate from each other. And so we use these cameras to really survey and census our populations, look at some of their habitat use. And I wanted to share just one of our most recent original research articles coming out from East Foundation and partners at Caesar Clayburgh, where we did a camera survey where we had fresh memory cards out from September through May 2021 at our ranch at Sauz. And in just that time, a little bit less than a year of camera surveying, we were able to get pictures of 15 ocelots out there on the ranch, 6 males and 9 females. And of course, we knew it was truly 15 individuals and not the same cat going by 15 times because we use those spot patterns. So knowing, that we have at least 15 cats there on our ranch, probably others that we missed in the photo surveys, and knowing that there's maybe 100 ocelots left in all of Texas makes us really proud at East Foundation to know that we are protecting such a big chunk of the remaining population of cats here in South Texas. The other thing that was interesting from this study is that, beyond counting ocelots, we were able to make an estimation of what the density of these cats is out in the wild. And what we estimated was about 17 or 18 ocelots for every 100 square kilometers, for every 25,000 acres. So, there's probably 30 of us in this room, and to have that many ocelots, we would need 200 square kilometers, really. So that just gives you a sense of the kind of low density that these animals are occurring at. They're solitary animals. They live individually, not in groups. And every single cat wants its own home range just to itself of a couple of square kilometers to hunt and all that. And so we need a lot of space for ocelots. We need to protect a lot of habitat to actually have populations of these cats. Beyond camera trapping, the other thing we do out on our East Foundation lands is we actually safely trap ocelots from the wild so that we can do hands-on research with them under sedation to collect more data, more than we can just get with the cameras. So every year over the winter time, we put out big cage or tomahawk traps. Some people recognize those traps like from trying to get raccoons out of their house or things like that. Much larger for us and baited with live pigeons to try to lure ocelots into these traps overnight. And, we sometimes are very fortunate to get to catch ocelots out on our ranch. To give you a little bit of a sense, this last year, we trapped from December through April. So 5 months this season, 50 traps open every night. And we caught 7 individual ocelots over that time. So that was actually a record year, one of our record years, but gives you a sense of how few ocelots are out there. And that same time, we probably caught 100 raccoons and about 20 bobcats and 20 coyotes. Yep, so, but ocelots much less common. So when we do capture these animals, we have our veterinarian from the East Foundation get them safely sedated and have them here on a table for about 30 minutes or an hour to collect data from them. So we'll take some biological samples from them, draw their blood, measure their length, pick some ticks and fleas off of them. That's what this gal's doing in the picture, getting ticks off their ears. We can see what parasites they have. And then we also will set GPS collars on these ocelots before we're going to release them back out, after that sedation. And that allows us to track them for a number of months or even up to a year to see where they're going, how far they range, all of that. One thing we did a lot of work with a recent PhD student at Kingsville was comparing the movements of ocelots to those of bobcats and coyotes out there, because people are concerned, are these three, small carnivore species competing with each other? Are they overlapping? And what we really find is that ocelots are very strongly selecting to be in habitat that has a tree canopy up top. They like to be underneath the shade of mesquites and oaks. And they also like it not to be an open understory, but to be a thick understory filled with all of that brush that they can hide in, that they can sneak up on their prey in. And they're really looking for vegetation down at the ground and up top. Bobcats and coyotes are a lot more flexible in their habitat use, that they can range farther out from that forest, use more open areas, and utilize space that ocelots are not going into. The last little bit of our ocelot hands-on research when we're out in the field is actually some research that our veterinarian is doing on assisted reproductive technologies in ocelots. And so what we do is when these ocelots are under sedation out there from the males, we are able to safely collect sperm samples from these cats and then get those frozen and stored for later use. And what we're trying to do is see if we can develop methods to have that sperm safely stored and then used later to artificially inseminate female ocelots in zoos. And doing that allows us to mix the genetics of zoo and wild cats and produce offspring without having to take animals out of the wild. Right here, this is a picture of an attempted artificial insemination procedure with Lilu, the ocelot at the Brownsville Zoo at Gladys Porter, using sperm samples collected from the wild at Sauz. So I'm going to talk a little bit later about our efforts for captive breeding of ocelots and how we're bringing the field and the zoo community together, but another kind of piece of our story here. And then aside from our research, I did just want to mention that we do a lot of our work, very publicly, and we're trying to increase really the awareness and appreciation of ocelots, around the country, but really especially here in South Texas, where, people's home is the ocelot's home. And so you all may have seen before, American Ocelot was a film for PBS. All of the ocelot footage you see there was amazing footage taken on our ranch of the ocelots living on the Sauz Ranch. Ocelots also appear for a minute in Deep in the Heart, a movie that came out to movie theaters. And then this one, Ranching with Ocelots, was part of a series done by HEB that you can find on YouTube. So I do have the QR code, and I'll show that again later if you all would like to see these videos and really get to meet some of these individual ocelots who kind of come out as characters in these movies. And just something personal, the star of the American Ocelot film is a mom ocelot with a couple of kittens. And a few years ago, when I was working out in the field trapping ocelots, I got to meet that mom and look her in the eye when she was trapped. And then a few days later, her daughter decided to go in the trap too. And so I got to meet both of those cats and see them out and thriving and alive on our ranch. So something super special to know that these cats are out there and kind of dream about being able to see them. Along with the videos, just one last thing, when we do have kids out to our ranches behind the gates, we almost always make sure that we get the chance to educate them about ocelots and other cats past and present in Texas. Again, just to grow their appreciation of being from South Texas, where endangered ocelots live as well. And so with that, I do want to transition a little bit to talking about our conservation work for ocelots. We protect them, we do research, but what are we trying to do to grow their numbers and help them get recovered from this endangered status listing under the Endangered Species Act that has classified ocelots since 1982. 40 years of being endangered because of those low numbers of 100 or so cats, and we want to increase them. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, for every endangered species, creates these recovery plans, roadmaps to how do we address the threats to our endangered species and grow their numbers again. They also have these criteria for what does it take for the species to no longer be endangered. And for ocelots, the goal is that we have at least 200 of the cats here in Texas long term. Of course, right now we think, maybe 100 or so are left, so we need to double the population to get recovered. And there's a whole lot of variety of actions that we need to do to help ocelots. Just one priority action identified in this plan is to establish a new ocelot population within some of its historical range in Texas. So that is to reintroduce ocelots to places where they no longer occur here in the state. And so if I show you all this map here, the red dot is where the existing breeding ocelot populations that are known to science occur, right? They're there at El Sauz and Laguna Ascosa along the coast, just 100 cats or so left there. All of the green areas are counties where there are historic records of ocelots occurring in the past. So the story is, back in history, there used to be ocelots across a wider part of South Texas along the coast into East Texas. It's believed that ocelots were in Arkansas and Louisiana as well historically. And over time, as habitat was destroyed for urban development or agricultural development, and ocelots were killed for, furs or to control predators, their numbers have declined right to this small populations that we have in the red. And when we think about, where ocelots are today, it's a very limited, small area of South Texas, just a couple of counties where ocelots still occur in the United States and breeding populations that we know of. And there's concern that, with ocelots occurring in such a small area, could one, catastrophic event potentially wipe out all the ocelots that we know of here in Texas? And for us, all of our ocelots are kind of in one basket here in Texas, and that basket happens to occur in a low elevation area along the coast, in a world where, we think climate change could be rising our sea levels and increasing our intensity or our frequency of hurricanes, right? And so we've got very small ocelot populations. They're in a limited area right near where hurricanes could potentially hit them. And what we want to do is do reintroduction, release ocelots and establish new populations in some of these green counties where they no longer occur, so we can increase our numbers, expand out our range, and reduce that risk of all the ocelots being lost from one hurricane or one wildfire, disease outbreak, whatever it might be. And just to show, this is a little figure from the Fish and Wildlife Service. When they're thinking about conserving species, they're worried about representation, which means genetic diversity. They're worried about resiliency, which means having big populations that can withstand hits. And they're worried about redundancy, which I wrote up here. It's the ability to withstand catastrophic events because you have multiple populations distributed across the species range, and you are spreading risk to minimize potential loss. So what we want to do for ocelots is build their population redundancy by doing this reintroduction. And we think it could be a really important action for recovering ocelots and supporting their conservation here. I think it's a bit of a daunting task to start a whole new population of an endangered species, but we've got some models and we've got some inspiration that we get from other species. This is the Iberian lynx right here, which at one time was the very most critically endangered cat in all of the world. Very similar thing happened to it as to ocelots, habitat loss and hunting, and they were down to just like 2 populations remaining. But because of captive breeding and reintroduction, the status of that cat has really improved in Spain and Portugal, the Iberian Peninsula, and that cat is getting closer to recovery. So we want to kind of model what was done there in Europe over here for ocelots. And so in 2021, the beginning of that year, almost 3.5 years ago, we started this Recover Texas Ocelots project to basically look into the feasibility of actually doing an ocelot reintroduction and to start making some plans for doing so. And we've got a really great variety of partners that are involved in this effort. The East Foundation, we kind of kicked things off and were the spark for starting this ocelot reintroduction planning. But we also have, of course, engaged Texas Parks and Wildlife, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, Texas A&M universities who have the science, to help conserve ocelots. And then there's other universities across the country who are interested in helping with ocelot conservation. as well as this is a logo of a zoo. The zoo community wants to help with ocelot reintroduction and conservation here in South Texas. And so these partners have been working away for the last couple of years to plan this. And one of the first things that we worked on was actually identifying the site. Where concretely are we going to release ocelots to try to start this new population? So right here, this is going back and showing you where our existing ocelot populations that we know of occur. And then that green chunk over there is a patch of what we think is suitable ocelot habitat, but that is not known to have any ocelots in it. So it's about 2 hours away from these existing populations, and it's north of Rio Grande City at the other end of the valley here. So I'm going to zoom into that habitat patch here and a little buffer around it and kind of describe this area to you all. So where this sits is the Texas Tamaulipan thorn scrub type of ecoregion that we live, that we know and love here in South Texas, you know, brushlands and all of that. This area that in green that we were able to identify using kind of geospatial or remote sensing work, it's 478 square kilometers of basically woody cover of trees and brush that are configured into big patches that are suitable for ocelots to live in. So this is not grassland, but brushy habitat, everything in the dark or light green. And then I mentioned before that ocelots like canopies up top and they like dense brush underneath. And we're able to look by satellite to see what the vegetation really looks like here. And everywhere that's in the dark green matched the metrics for canopy cover and sort of ground level vegetation that's used by ocelots at Sauz in the existing populations. These light green areas, they're either missing the top canopy cover or the dense understory brush. But really what we're looking at there is something 4+ times the size just of our Sauz Ranch of unoccupied ocelot habitat. And we're just looking at the things that are contiguous to our patch. There could be other non-contiguous areas there as well. So big area of remote potential habitat. There's no ocelots there currently that we know of. There's been camera trapping done here before with no detections. We have been able to find plenty of bobcats and coyotes there. So we know this area can support those small types of carnivores. And that's because there's a whole variety of small and medium-sized prey animals there. Everything from your rabbits and mice and rats to, javelinas, white-tailed deer, all of that. And that's been studied in the area. We talk about the potential threats to ocelots in this area. It's known that roads are a big risk factor for ocelots and their existing populations in Texas, and it's going to be hard to find anywhere that doesn't have roads around it. But this habitat patch in green, it's mostly close to smaller farm to market roads versus, big interstates, high traffic highways, things like that. So being out in a very remote area, just with those county roads that don't see a lot of traffic, hopefully reduces the risk of potential vehicle collisions out in this reintroduction area. It's also existing over 100 kilometers inland from the coast. So that potential for hurricanes coming in and flooding habitat, knocking down trees is going to be reduced here. And then because it's just such a remote part of South Texas, it's not projected to be developed at all for, new urban developments or agriculture because it's way out there. And what the land really is just large, working private ranches out here being used for cattle, being used for hunting and wildlife management, a very quiet place, a lot of large properties versus small ones, which is good for planning for wildlife conservation because big properties with fewer landowners means less gates, less fences, less people you have to coordinate with. So it's got that kind of minimal fragmentation. And this big chunk of orange you see right here is just one single property. And that's actually the East Foundation's San Antonio Viejo Ranch in Jim, Hogg, and Starr counties. So for East Foundation, of course, we've got the mission to protect this land in perpetuity for ranching, science, and education. And so we're going to be protecting just within our ranch here, a little bit over 100 square kilometers of potential ocelot habitat there. And we're putting that forward as the ocelot reintroduction site, where we would like to release these cats out. It won't look exactly like this, but we want to release available cats and start building that reintroduced new population to help with ocelot recovery. Now, one thing, we had to think about, we're talking about releasing ocelots onto our private working cattle ranch in an area that's surrounded by all other private working lands. And the situation, in Texas and all around the country is that private landowners tend to have, some concerns, some anxiety over the implications of having endangered species on their lands, right? Landowners are concerned that endangered ocelots or other animals could lead to land use restrictions, potential penalties, liabilities, things like that. And what we didn't want with the ocelot reintroduction is to say, we're going to add this endangered species to private working lands, but then we're going to expose all these landowners to new risks that could potentially impact their ability to ranch or maintain roads or things like that. And so what we did at the East Foundation was we put forward with the Fish and Wildlife Service what's called a Safe Harbor Agreement for ocelot reintroduction. And under these Safe Harbor Agreements, private landowners like the East Foundation or any other family ranch, they voluntarily put forward that they're going to do some good conservation work to increase the numbers of threatened or endangered species on their lands. They're going to release animals on there. They're going to, restore the habitat, something like that. And then in exchange for doing that good conservation work, landowners get assurances from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service that so long as they do that work and increase the numbers of species, they won't then be required to do any additional or different management on their land. So they wouldn't be required to stop doing cattle ranching because now there's endangered species, or to establish a national park on their land because there's endangered species there. And so last year around this time, we were writing up this East Foundation Programmatic Safe Harbor Agreement for ocelot reintroduction. That was going to be an agreement between us and the Fish and Wildlife Service, with the ultimate goal of providing a conservation benefit to ocelots by reintroducing them onto private ranch lands here in South Texas. This agreement, officially, we put it forward back in the fall, this last year in September. You all might have seen it on the news back then, where we had applied for a permit. We put forward this agreement, and then it went out for a public comment period for 30 days for the whole country to be able to weigh in and say what they thought about this proposed ocelot reintroduction on private lands. Over a month, we got about 60 comments. It was really interesting. We got individuals and organizations from Texas and around the country writing in, mostly just saying that they support ocelot population expansion. In this group in particular, the National Wildlife Federation out of Washington, D.C., they put out like an email to all of their followers around the country, and they got about 10,000 signatures from citizens across the U.S. who signed on saying, I support ocelot conservation and reintroduction and population expansion on ranch lands in South Texas. So really cool to see just how people around the country are supportive of this and interested in it. And just to give you all a little bit more sense, what is this Safe Harbor Agreement all about that you see in the news a little bit? Well, the key elements of it are, first, that the East Foundation is putting forward conservation actions to benefit ocelots. Namely, we're going to release the cats out onto our private working ranch, and then we're going to monitor them by putting out cameras, collaring them, and all of that, so we can see if this is working and helping ocelot conservation. In exchange for us doing that good work for ocelot conservation, we are assured that we can continue operating the ranch and using that with no restrictions on the ability to work that private property and do our cattle ranching. And then all in all, the net net outcome of this safe harbor agreement is that doing the reintroduction and assuring the private land uses can continue, we're creating a benefit for ocelots that's going to help increase the species numbers and help it get recovered from that, imperiled, endangered status, hopefully. Something important with the safe harbor is that we are going to release the ocelots here on the San Antonio Viejo, and the cats are unlikely to respect the property lines. They're probably going to disperse onto other available habitat across fences and on other people's lands. And so for that reason, we made this agreement programmatic or multi-landowner. And so any landowners that are within this golden area to the west of Highway 281, where there haven't been any ocelot populations found, they're going to be able to sign up to participate in the ocelot reintroduction effort. And if they do that, they're really going to coordinate with us at the East Foundation to monitor these reintroduced ocelots, maybe do extra research or habitat management to help them. And they're also going to get those assurances that they can keep using their land for ranching, wildlife, conservation, whatever else they're liking to do. And because, it's possible that some folks are, not going to be interested in the safe harbor agreement, not wanting to sign up for this program, maybe concerned, again, is the East Foundation bringing this endangered species to private lands and going to shut down, private land uses here and impact our ability to work the ranches. And so what we came up with between East Foundation and the Fish and Wildlife Service is that for any private landowners within 50 kilometers of the San Antonio Viejo Ranch, and 50 kilometers really the maximum we think an ocelot could ever disperse, all these landowners in this area are also going to be assured that they're not going to be restricted in their land uses because of the reintroduced ocelots, because we really think that the ranching activities that are going on in this remote area are going to be compatible with ocelot conservation. And we want to assure folks that the ocelot reintroduction isn't going to impact their land uses, and there's no reason to be anything but supportive of this effort for this endangered species, and there won't be any risks. And so back almost 2 months ago now, we had some folks from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service come down to visit South Texas and officially approve this safe harbor agreement, ceremonially signed off on it, authorizing the East Foundation to do ocelot reintroduction onto private lands with all the assurances on the ability to keep ranching. And so this is just a really unique kind of milestone for us in the ocelot reintroduction planning, that we've been able to use this safe harbor tool to really get landowners to be supportive of wanting to expand ocelots out on their private ranch lands. And we really thought it was important to get this kind of legal and policy stuff worked out so that we could be sure people would be supportive of doing the ocelot reintroduction. And then now we're able to really turn our attention to focusing on actually getting the ocelots that we want to use for reintroduction or releases. Since we have so few ocelots, already existing in Texas, of course, we don't want to take any of the individuals out of the existing populations and hurt those populations to try to build a new one. So what we're planning to do instead is actually captive breeding of ocelots. And so what we're planning to do later this year is actually build what we're going to call an ocelot conservation facility. It's going to look like this in Kingsville, near Texas A&M Kingsville. And what this facility is going to have is places where we can hold ocelots in enclosures and be naturally breeding them, or doing that artificial insemination, assisted reproduction. And then we're going to take the kittens that are born there, and we're going to raise them in big outdoor enclosures where they're going to have natural vegetation. They're going to have prey put in there. They're not going to see people. And we're going to raise those kittens up so that they're ready to go out into the wild and be the source for us to build the new population and do reintroduction. And the model for this, again, it comes from the Iberian lynx. So this is a picture of a lynx breeding facility, I believe, in Spain, where they've got these big enclosures. They're breeding lynx, raising these kittens, and then they get them released out to the wild to start new populations and help wild conservation. And when we talk about, who are the breeders, who are going to be bringing into this ocelot conservation facility, that we're going to be building later this year. We are super lucky that we are partnered up with the zoo community here in the US to help with ocelot breeding. And so the zoos are starting this program called SAFE, or Saving Animals from Extinction, which basically means that the zoos are going to take their cats that are there in captivity and be managing that population for the benefit of wild ocelot conservation in Texas. So the zoos are going to, in the future, be sending, breeding age ocelots down here to Texas, so we can be breeding them or doing that artificial insemination to produce kittens to release to the wild. And the U.S. zoo community is also looking to zoos in other countries around the world to see if they could import some ocelots for breeding from zoos. We've also got the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service trying to work with partners in Mexico to collect ocelots or ocelot genetics from the wild there and bring them to our ocelot conservation facility so we can get this breeding going and do the reintroduction. So I do have to ask you all, to be a little bit patient with us. Ocelots are not prolific and fast breeders. It's going to take them a little bit to produce their kittens, and it takes a few years for them to mature and be ready to reproduce. So it's a couple-year process, for us to build a facility and get some kittens born and raised up old enough to, leave mom and go out to the wild. But we've really set ourselves up where we've got this reintroduction site, we're creating this breeding facility, and we're really excited of bringing, captive breeding and reintroduction together to help our ocelot conservation here in Texas. And so with that, that's about all I have about East Foundation stuff, but I did just want to bring up a couple other notes for folks, just general about ocelot conservation. I mentioned earlier the Laguna Atascosa National Wildlife Refuge. Let's see, about an hour and a half from here and far to the west of Harlingen is where you want to go if you want to see where ocelots are at, walk where ocelots are at, and be part of their habitat. Our East Foundation ranches, are working ranches with prescribed burns and cattle ranching and wildlife work going on. So they're not typically open for, public hiking and things like that. But the Laguna Atascosa is the place to go to hike around an ocelot habitat, and you can get one of their conservation license plates too to help support ocelot conservation there. I wanted to mention too, road crossings are super important for ocelots here in South Texas. I think the number one thing we know of that kills ocelots in Texas is collisions with cars. When they get out of that forest, that thorn scrub habitat, they end up having to cross roads, and animals are hit and killed that way. And so it's really important to support efforts like what the Texas Department of Transportation has going to build wildlife crossings, underpasses under our highways to mitigate collisions with ocelots or other wildlife. And then a lot of folks do like to ask us what they can do to help ocelot conservation here in Texas. And it's one of the things we're telling folks about now, an organization to look into is called American Forests. I don't know if folks are familiar with them already, but they have nurseries down here in South Texas where they are raising little seedlings of brush and tree species. And then American Forest purchases old agricultural lands that have been cleared. And then they have big public planting events where people come out and they plant all those brush species and trees, so we can try to regrow and restore some of our native habitat to bring back, birds and wildlife, and potentially maybe ocelots as well. Remember, these cats need a lot of space. A lot of it's been destroyed, for conversion to agriculture, and helping work in a nursery or do planting is one way to try to create more ocelot habitat. And so with that, I just do want to say thank you again to everybody. I've got some articles and the videos here if you'd like to click that for any of those, and super happy to talk about anyone's questions. I did bring some East Foundation literature as well that I'll put out in case anyone would like to learn more about us. Thank you. Yeah.
So our family actually owns land, it looks like, in that area. So if I get family members who are interested indicating what you would think. And is there anything, if they wanted to help do land management in order to provide habitat for ocelots, what, do you guys provide technical assistance?
Could you repeat that question for the people at home?
Yeah, that was a great question. I'm really glad that you're here and that you have kind of that family connection. So she's asking about what can landowners in the area do to help conservation there for ocelots? What could they do to help in the reintroduction area? In our safe harbor agreement, we've got some kind of recommended potential habitat management projects. So that's things like trying to protect the brushlands that are still there, keep that, brushy area rather than clearing it, because that's the habitat the ocelots want to be in. There's potential to try to do kind of restoration, planting types of things. If you have open areas that you want to grow brush back in, along with protection, East Foundation, we put in there potential wildfire prevention could be a good way to try to, again, protect the brush that you have. So whether that means you have, lanes or fire breaks in there, so you can protect that habitat is something. The other one, when the ocelots are going to be going there, that could be good is supplement water, little water guzzlers. And those places can, open up new areas of habitat for ocelots because new drinking water sources. And those are great spots to potentially set up cameras to monitor these cats. So landowners in the area could connect with us at East Foundation if they're interested in doing some monitoring, like if they want to put out cameras to watch for ocelots, or one day if an ocelot's reproducing there and we want to go see where the den is, things like that. And for landowners to get involved with that, they sign up for the safe harbor through East Foundation, and then either with us or with partners at Texas A&M Kingsville or TPWD, we would do that technical assistance to help, put into the works whatever land management practices are of interest. Yeah, thank you.
So it's a pretty dry area over there. So you answered partially that question about water availability for these ocelots. Do y'all land on, the whole area with the landowners or with y'all?
Right, good question. I'll say it again. He's asking about, water sources for ocelots because it's the wild horse desert, right? It's dry. One thing we know is that the ocelots will use the stock tanks. So these areas being used for cattle ranching is actually kind of a benefit because that means there's already, constant water sources out there for the cattle. And I think in the future, we're going to look at maybe making extra supplement water sources, extra, guzzlers, to be able to provide more water to ocelots, and again, hopefully get their pictures when they go to those. Yes.
The Conservation Fund lists the East Foundation along with some of the other surrounding Holly Beach and some other areas surrounding El Sauz. And I was wondering, it makes me wonder, do you work with the surrounding area ranches or with the foundation, the Conservation Fund? I mean, it sounds like they're umbrella organizations, and I guess I never really understood, even from Ben Masters' film, what research is going on with the surrounding area.
Yeah, it's a great question she's asking about. In the ranch population of ocelots, we know there's El Sauz, but what about other lands there and what's being done there? And the Conservation Fund and the Nature Conservancy and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service do have some conservation easements on private lands. So areas that are, being fenced off and protected for ocelots. And there is some camera trapping in some of those locations and trapping and collaring of ocelots for research. So that's some of the lands. And then some of the lands, they don't do research. It's just not part of their mission. East Foundation has a science mission. Some places don't. And that doesn't mean they're not still protecting all of that habitat for ocelots and wildlife. They're just not necessarily, doing it publicly by making movies like we are, or by doing the research. But, we think we don't have the exact, precise locations of where ocelots are because not everyone is monitoring them. But we think a lot of that area, of ranches that have brush have the potential to have ocelots as all part of that ranch population.
Yeah, online question. Is there any attempt to maintain the genetic connection to the larger population in South America?
Yes, good question. Asking about the genetics of our ocelots in Texas versus the rest of them in Central and South America. And I didn't talk about it today, but our ocelots here in Texas, that we have remaining, they are isolated, we believe, from the ocelots in Mexico because of the amount of urbanization and development, here on the US and on the Mexico sides of the borders. So those cats are not able to get in between and be interchanging their genetics. And for the last, several decades, our Texas ocelots have been isolated on their own island. They're interbreeding just with each other, no new genetics coming in, right? And so one of the goals for ocelots is to bring some new genetic diversity in, potentially from northern Mexico, because those cats would be similar. They'll also be evolved to living in thorn scrub, but they'll have some little bit different genetic diversity that can come into that population and help, reduce potential inbreeding and bring in new genetics that could help, with adaptation to diseases, things like that. So hopefully, making partners in Mexico to help captive breeding and reintroduction is also going to help with getting genetic diversity cats to bring into the existing population. And our captive breeding, the cats produced there could help start new populations, or some of those offspring could be released into the existing populations to give them some more cats and a little boost of new genetic diversity.
Hi, Lindsay. I'm online. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay. Thank you for your presentation. I really enjoyed it because I volunteer at one of those nurseries, so that helps me get the bigger picture when I'm planting all those little seedlings and things. But I had a question. I thought I heard you say that if the ocelot population reached 200, they would be downlisted or delisted. How is that number derived, or is it based on like what would be genetically viable population, or what might be sustainable in South Texas?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I hope you all follow up with her to talk about maybe volunteering at the nursery and contributing to wildlife conservation. And that number of 200 cats, yes, it comes from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and partner kind of models and work like that to see what is a minimum viable population here that is not going to go into one of those extinction vortexes where they're inbreeding and their numbers are low and they decline and decline. 200 cats, I think, is believed to be sustainable over time. And that kind of metric was created for the 2016 Fish and Wildlife Service Recovery Plan. That's their target, to get 200 ocelots here. But that's also not the only criteria for getting them recovered. There's other things like they want a certain number of ocelots to be in Tamaulipas and in Arizona and here in Texas and range-wide. So it's kind of a puzzle. There's a variety of pieces that go into us maybe one day officially saying ocelots are no longer endangered, and having at least 200 here in Texas for I think at least 10 years consistently is one thing that we're trying to work at here.
We have time for one more quick question.
What's the average size of an adult ocelot?
Great question. I would love to know your guess on what the size of an ocelot is. Some kids the other week told me they thought 100 pounds.
I would say maybe 30.
Yeah, she guessed 30. The very heaviest one that we saw was I think 30 or 31. So a lot of them are going to be in the 20 to 25 pound type of range. I'll say they're very long and lean. So, you hold it, of course, they have that very long 1 foot tail, but they're not particularly heavy. And I like to say my family has a house cat who's about this long, and he weighs like 16 or 18 pounds. He's packing it in. He's very dense, but the ocelots are long and lean and a small cat. So that reminds us again that they're eating rabbits and mice and rats. They're not big enough to be taking down, bucks and cattle and all of that.
Thank you, Lindsay. Appreciate you coming in and talking to us.
Okay, we'll go on with our business meeting and I'll tell you at the end what the AT hours will be in the business meeting, your volunteer hours. Okay, first Gail is here.
Are we not gonna take a break?
Yeah, let's.
Oh. Okay, take a break. 5 minutes, 5 minutes. Okay, could we begin our business part of our meeting? Okay, we're going to begin the business part of our meeting. And if you haven't signed the attendance sheet, please do before you leave. And okay, let me see. You all got the minutes to last month's meeting that Velma did. Was there any corrections or anything you felt need changing? Anyone? Okay.
Great
then-
job, Velma.
Yes, yes, thank you, Velma. She tries to keep up with us going quickly through here, but she does a great job.
She does.
Okay, then the minutes from last month's meeting will be accepted. And, okay, now we got our officers' reports. Jennifer, do you want to come up and tell us about anything you have planned for next month?
Hi, everyone. I know we're moving into the summer months and people will be going on vacations, but I hope you'll be able to join us for our June meeting. We will have one of our own chapter members, Katarina Miranda, talking about foraging forests, so foraging here in the RGB. I would love to see people bring in forage foods. If that's something that you're into, you have some mesquite flowers and nopalitos. To bring some food to share. That would be something really fun for our chapter when we learn about foraging next month. Thank you.
Next month, the June general meeting, which is what, the 20th, I believe, June 17th, on June 17th. Okay, now we got membership committee. We don't have Ronnie or Jaime, okay, here tonight. All right, then we'll just forego that report. Awards and recognitions. We have the list up on the screen. Okay, these are the awards for recertification and milestones. So I will call up the people that are here. We have Mike McClure is receiving his certification pin from this year. His rattlesnake pin. Yes, your hair looks. Okay, Cindy, do we do one? Cindy and John McKee together. One picture.
Oh, we gotta show the pin. Yeah, smile. Yeah. You got it.
Yeah. And Carla, she got her certification pin this year. Everybody wants this pin, right? This rattlesnake pin. It's very pretty. Okay, we have some milestones. Now, the people on the screen are all the people that earned certification of milestones. So we're just announcing the people that are here tonight. So we got Carla. She won her 100-hour pin. And next is Zeke. Yes, he got, it's 250 hours that he earned.
You know. I can think, but.
We have to talk. See, tonight. Try to get away. Okay, anything from communication? Anita, you have anything? You got some articles written or submitted to you? Good, good. For the Chachalaca. Joseph, do you have anything you'd like to share? Busy.
Yeah, I was gonna go over the, John Brush put together the report of the City Nature Challenge. I'm not gonna read everything, but I'll go over it real quick if you want. To view it, it's on the Quinta Mazatlan blog. I realize I haven't sent it out to everybody, so I'll email the mailing list. Showing where everything in Texas has been reported. We still have a lot less than we'd like in Starr County and Willacy County. I think Willacy County improved a bit this year. Our average observations for each observer went up this year. We had 178 in the past years, 220 this year. And then I actually had less, so it wasn't all me. Here's our ways you can participate other than just observing. Like up there way at the top of identifiers is Elizabeth Perdomo. She's out of the state now, but she's still a member and she's still identifying local plants for us. And then John Brush, he's right there in the middle between top identifier and a top observer. And then out of the top 20 observers and most species, more than half are TMN members between the two chapters. And if you count chapter friends and park rangers and stuff, it's 3/4 of us are. Very few that are just doing this on their own. They go crazy. They eventually join us. I think I'll let you guys read that, showing which is up and down in percentages. John mentioned reptiles were down this year, and birds are actually down too. Maybe it was the heat. Oh yeah, it was wind. I was down on moth observations too, because I just couldn't do mothing. That's a good reason. Yeah, Anita says she has a skunk that was keeping her from her moth sheet. All right, now I guess that's it. I'll let,
Advanced training. Judy Perkins River is going to give her report. Trips.
Hello, everyone. So Judy is out having fun in the Fort Davis area, and I'm so jealous, but I'm happy for her. Anyway, the only thing I have on her behalf is on June 1st, there will be a field trip, a chapter field trip to a ranch out in, out in the sand sheet over near San Isidro. And this is Bianca Banda's ranch. She works over at Benson State Park. And she has offered this field trip to us. It's June 1st. What you need to know right now is that we will be meeting at Benson parking lot around between 7:30 and 8. We're looking at trying to leave there by 8:30. We can do carpooling. We need vehicles that are a little higher off the ground than, a little car, maybe an SUV or a truck, because we will be driving around her ranch first and then stopping and getting down, and she'll be talking to us about the vegetation and wildlife and et cetera. So it should be very informative. A reminder that it is going to be hot, so dress for that. Long pants are preferred since we'll be walking around. She will be sending out an email with all this information. Okay, as soon as she gets back, she'll do that. But she wanted me to mention it to you all so you could know now and maybe start making plans to go. Let's see what else. It is an hour away. And we are planning on being there at least an hour and a half. Everything is, flexible. Nothing's written in stone. So plan on that, take snacks or whatever. And we are considering, maybe stopping for lunch on the way back. It's up to us. Once we're there as a group, we can do what we want, coordinate. Any questions on that? June 1st. It's a Saturday. Okay.
Thank you, River. Volunteer Service Project, that's River Julie. Don't go away.
Okay. So on volunteer service opportunities, I haven't heard from any of our sites that need help in particular for certain events. Like we were very busy in April and May, but we do have some ongoing things. You can always call any nature site, the state parks, Falcon, Benson, Estero, Resaca del Palma, all throughout the valley and Starr County, and ask them what you can do. Because during the summer, our winter visitors leave and a lot of our volunteers are gone. And so we're left with just a few. And if you have extra time, anything, that you can do, just call up one of these sites, the Quinta, McAllen Nature Center. I mentioned Benson, I'll do it again because that's where I volunteer, Benson.
Yeah, no, okay.
Frontera Audubon, the Nature Center in Wesco,
Yeah, the
Valley Nature Center.
And what you mentioned, the Valley Nature Center will have, I believe it's 10 summer camps this summer for special needs students, 3 of them, and then one FBI run camp on forensics, and then an Asian camps, and they're always needing volunteers.
Can you email that to me, Mike, or have somebody do it?
Well, I'll have the director do that.
Yeah, that way I can forward that to the membership. Also, we have citizen science projects like Adopt a Loop. There are 2 loops that we have as a chapter adopted. And one of them is, we've had it for a little while, and Donna knows a lot about that because she's in charge of that. And it is the Estero Llano Loop, and it includes the state park, Estero Llano Grande, Mercedes Civic Center and HEB Park, the Valley Nature Center, and Frontera Audubon. So if any of you live in that area and want to do some volunteer work as a citizen scientist, you go and you observe, you put your observations either in iNaturalist or eBird. Is that correct, Donna? And there's certain information you need, which you will receive in the email. I will resend it. It was sent out before, but I'll send it again. And the other loop is new to us, and it is, it's the Los Ebanos Loop, and it includes Anzalduas County Park, National Butterfly Center, Benson Rio Grande Valley State Park, Uteria Tract, and the Chihuahua Preserve, yeah. But that one supposedly is close to us, but closed to us. And so we're not gonna visit that one. However, the others we are. So if you live in, the western side of Hidalgo and you wanna do one of these sites, then please. Okay, so we could use your help. Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, River. Okay, Jim, our education director or new class director.
So Ann forgot to put me on the agenda. I should have not reminded her. I would have got away with it, but I did. This year's class, we had two goals really. One was to increase our graduation, and the second one was to increase participation of the graduates. I can report on the first one. Out of 22 participants, 21 graduated. That's a much better record than we had last year. So this year we made a tremendous improvement. I would still like to see more participation from class members in the chapter, and so we still need to work on that. But that gives you some idea of where we're going. We take a break, of course, during the summer. The educational committee will get back together in September, October, and start our next year. So
We have one graduate here tonight.
we have one graduate participant from the class here tonight. Yep, thanks for showing up. Oh, two. We have two. Yes, I didn't see you back there. Great. So it's heading in the right direction.
Thank you, Jim. Right now, we're going to have a little presentation by Logan. He presented last month at our general meeting about native garden. And so he's looking for some help. So I gave him 5 or 8 minutes to do his little talk here. Okay. Sure, it's actually a little bit shorter than that. So there is a new butterfly garden that is now with the Master Naturalists. It is the Sherry Heights Garden. So we're going to have about 3 different work days beginning Monday next week. In the morning from 8:30 to 9:30, which is the initial weeding. It's a pretty small space. I would say it's about probably as the space right here between these 3 tables. And then phase 2, the next week on Monday from 8:30 to 9:30 is the secondary weeding. Then phase 3 is the planting. So these are the 3 sort of dates that I have in mind. It may take only 1 weeding date to do the whole thing. I don't know. And if that doesn't work for you in terms of the time or date, I'm always flexible in terms of that. So you can email me. I do have a sheet left with River back over there at that table in case if y'all want to sign up. And as I said, if y'all are not available at that time or on that day, I have my number and my email there in terms of working out a date if you wanted to stop by and help out with some plans. So that's all that I have.
You were gonna do some planting.
Correct, yes.
Our chapter is kind of sponsoring this, and we're gonna provide plants. 5 plants, Logan to plant for that garden, so it's gonna be like our TMN project.
Correct, yeah. Thank you, thanks you.
This is a pretty tough time to plant things.
Correct.
Do you have, is there gonna be constant water in that?
Yes, there. Oh yeah, it's golf course property, so there's a fire hose of water that comes on. I'm not too sure the exact time frame, but there's constant water in terms of that. And I mean, truthfully, the planting can wait. I know that it's not the best time to do it, but I'm kind of learning as I kind of go along with this. So if anybody has some ideas or in terms of suggestions with that, I'm up to kind of figuring it out as well. So, but yes, the planting might be later, but we're aiming towards the Texas Butterfly Festival in October. That being a spot that members on the festival can attend to in hopes of October. So that's kind of the goal. Thank you. Thanks, Logan. And maybe each month at our meeting, you can give us a little update how things are going. Thank you. Is there any other announcements? Okay, anything that anybody wants to bring up or information you need? And our next, the next meeting will be our board meeting on June 3rd. You just need a link, contact Joseph for a link to join. And our next general meeting is the third Monday of the month, June 17th. Is there anything else before I close the meeting? Roy wants to talk?
Yeah, you want me to do it from back here? That's fine. I need a microphone.
Okay. We got people at home.
I thought I heard somebody squeaking from the front there. Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks. I need this. Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Roy. I'm the lead interpreter at Benson Rio Grande Valley State Park. I am a charter member of the first chapter, and my wife helped start this chapter. She was the one that left with the kids a minute ago. They gotta get fed, and a lot of familiar faces. Great to see you guys still doing the good work, right? The good stuff. There's nothing wrong with us. There's something wrong with everybody else. All right, and those of us who spend our time outside, kind of promoting wildlife and nature, you're doing the good stuff. I did want to mention a couple of things. I know that thank you East Foundation for that presentation. It's excellent. I think we all learned a lot about that. Our park is doing a little. We have some of our volunteers. Janie, one of y'all's, is one of ours as well, and we've got some cat monitoring going in our park as well. We have some cameras set up. We're getting more cameras. There are some rumors of ocelots. There are some rumors of mountain lion. There's plenty of bobcats, but we are not going to know unless we have the camera traps out there. Recently, there was a big, large scat that was found in the park. It was found by the game warden. It was given to shown to one of our naturalists and one of our volunteers, and then he came and dumped that on my desk. And this, so after asking around, we ended up talking to the state mammologist, and they said that there is plenty of documentation, but there is no confirmation of mountain lion in the county of Hidalgo. And that kind of drove me a little mad, because I know that all the ranch country out here, and I know just growing up out here, that there are mountain lions somewhere here and there, but no real confirmation. So we had that scat frozen, and we sent it to Clayburgh, and they have it, and they've been sitting on it for a while, and I don't know when they're gonna really test it, but hopefully very soon we're gonna find out exactly what's going on. And that conversation led to a lot more. Once we told him that Janie was working out there, and OJ Caranco back there, he's our park superintendent, and he's been very supportive of all of this. We spoke to the director of the institute, and they want to partner up with us. They want to show us how they do it. They want to show us how they attract the cats and how they do these camera traps themselves. So we're looking forward to a lot of that as well in the future. But I did want to take this minute real quick just to let you guys know that Benson does have plenty of opportunities. River is one of actually there's several of you all out here that work with us at Benson and have worked with us in the past. So you know how we are. We know how good we can be to you, and we're very grateful to you to come and spend some volunteer time with us. But just I'm going to put a couple of little bugs in your ear about upcoming opportunities. We have been working. You all know, if you've been in the park lately, that we had a lot of habitat loss after the floods in 2010, and we are no longer dealing with a conservation. We've already gotten the green light from our regional habitat specialists to just go in there and do some restoration, some true restoration. So in-house, we've been working on a long-term habitat restoration plan. What we need is a garden gang. And we have a dedicated landscaper now, or our garden guy right there, and who works for us as well. Emilio is back in there as well, and he's been working under Bianca, learning a whole lot about habitat and how to maintain it, and what it needs, and how every single plant has its special needs, and how to take care of that. And so we've started a little bit of a seed bank. We've gotten some grants to get trees. OJ has been great about helping us so that we can purchase whatever we need. So if you need hours, or those are the new students who are looking for something to do, Bianca will help you out and we'll show you what it is we need to do when we're looking at some of our restoration plans. Moth Week is coming up in July. We will be doing some stuff for Moth Week. Look at the Moth Week schedule. We'll post it pretty soon, sometime this month, this week, so that you'll see what we have planned for Moth Week. If you have been following what Bianca's been up to, she's got over 400, 500 moths identified in our park. One has not been, they can't figure it out. It may be a new species. One looks like it hasn't been seen in 100 years. And a couple of them, they can't even make up their minds over. So there's some real good stuff happening as far as, some of these tiny insects. And, iNaturalist is really the place to look that up, to see what Bianca has been up to. Mostly it started out as a competition between her and John Yoakum over at Estero. We just want a friendly competition against our sister parks as usual. Joseph, hi. And so we're doing a Hawk ID thing. Hawk Watch begins again in fall. So September, October is Hawk Watch. The last week of August is going to be Hawk ID. So I usually do a 3-hour workshop on hawk identification, demystifying birds in flight, so you can ID these things during Hawk Watch.
That's good. Advanced training.
Advanced training, yeah. 3 hours. Bring up pillows. And then August the 20th or September 21. This is going to be our big event. So we started it last year as our centennial event. It's going to become our regular event. What the people want after COVID was outdoor skills. They want to know how to fish. They want to know how to camp. They want to light a fire. They want to do Dutch oven. They want to do archery. They want to learn all these things so they can take their kids out and finally just get out of the house. And they've discovered the outdoors. And you've seen them out there. A lot of people who just want to learn. And I think a lot of us, who have come into our group here, are people who are discovering now, realizing how special this place is. September 21, Saturday, is our boss Benson Outdoor Skills Showcase. All right, we're hoping for a couple thousand people, and we need volunteers for that. So just putting it out there before we make other plans in September. Hawk Watch is September, October. Training for Hawk ID advanced training the last week of August. That's Saturday of August. And boss is September 21. And just wanted to put that out there. And thank you all for the invitation. And I appreciate you. And thank you all very much.
Sent all this to River. She puts it, River will put it out to the whole chapter
Bug River
for opportunity.
Okay.
You
Thanks.
bug her.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy. Okay, Gail. There she is. Can you come up and give us a little report? I think Joseph has it on the screen. Welcome back from Italy. Cinque Terre. You went, you took the ferry, you stayed.
Fabulous. All right, so as usual, if you have any questions, just let me know. We're in our slow time, so May was, this was April, May is also very slowing down, but we did kind of close out our education. The classes are just about finished with all of that, and so you would see that on here, pretty much the education expenses. Let me see, I think I put it up already. But I did want to mention that for the classes, once we've brought in all of the income from the classes, the tuition payments, and then against the total expenses, just looking to make sure that we're covering our, we're pretty close in there, and also judging what can we do for scholarships, how much leeway do we have, and we're pretty much even. I think we have a few outstanding things left, but we had, our total income was $3,300 from classes, and our expenses were $2,676. So it was very close, but still we have some leeway there for scholarships. So we'll be remembering that for next year. And we also finished out all of the home and garden show, and that was about almost $1,700 that we ended up netting from that also. So that was very good. So all of that's kind of closed out. Very good job.
I think since Gail brought up scholarships. Scholarships for the new class, and we usually do 2 or 3. They apply for these scholarships. And I'd like each director of each of our programs to think about how a student can help, because I had a terrible time this year trying to find something for those students. For them, they should give back to our chapter. If we're giving them a scholarship to get the class free, then we have the garden back here that they work on, but we need other things too. Because we had 3 this year and only 1 had a project to work on. So that's kind of sad. I'd like to see them give back to the chapter. Okay. Judy, okay, we got that. River, Logan. Okay, I guess that ends our meeting for tonight. If no one has anything else, we'll have 1 hour for advanced training for our Ocelot presentation and 0.75 for our volunteer hours for our meeting. Okay, and with that, I'm gonna adjourn the meeting. Thank you for coming. Appreciate you. See you again next month.